I'd kind of thought about doing my makeup before tonight's stream, where I continue reading from Fat is a Feminist Issue, but I uh, I got distracted playing solitaire games on my phone, so let's uh let's have a few minutes, see if anybody wants to show up. Why, hello, Murnau. Hello, little noodle. Oh. Getting cat bombed right away. Hi. Hello. Oh, who's a sweet little noodle? Who's a sweet little noodle? Okay. Oh, you're so delicious. You're a delicious little boy. Yes, you are. Okay, so, hi. What you doing? Cat, yes, I see your butthole. It is bright and white, and it is your anus. Yep. Oh my gosh. Yes, I know. Everybody loves your butthole. Yes, we do. We all love it. That's why you show it off to everybody. What, am I being annoying? Am I being just a little bit annoying? Oh dear. Cat! Seriously? Come here. Do you want lap, or do you want to be a pain in my butt? But why not both, says Murnau. Really, Cat? Okay. Yes. Come here. Do you want lap or not? What? What? Do you want this? Do you want some spanks? Do you want some slap ass? Do you want some slap ass? Really? Come here. What? Oh my gosh. Yes, I see you. You're a kitty. You're very, very cute. And you're very, very sweet. And you're so very fluffy. Murnau. Here. Cat, I swear. Alright, so let's see. We've barely been on 3 minutes, and it's been mostly cat. Yes, what's up, little goofball? Murnau is a goofball. He's my goofy little floofball. I swear. Cat, I'm going to take this tail away until you can use it responsibly. Like the adult kitty you are. He knows this is an empty threat. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You know it so much. Oh, you know it. You knows it, you knows it, you knows it. You are as annoying as you are cute. You know this, right? Of course you do. It's how you get away with everything. Really? Is it the Murnau show? Is it the Murnau show? Is it the Murnau show? Oh, I think it is. I think it is. I think it is. Oh, yes, it is. Uh-huh. Look at that fluffy tail. Look at the fluffy tail. Oh, yes. What you doing? What's up, goofball? Murnau is a floofball. He's a fluffy little goofball. Oh, yes. I know, you're so silly. You're a silly little boy, aren't you? Okay, so buttons. Okay, I think last night let's go back to where there was a page break. Really? Okay, so I did not end where I was at a good page break, but I am thinking of downloading some of this from last night and then tonight, and then like splicing it together to make like a decent enough video that's in better segments. So, okay, we're about 6 minutes in, and we've got one person in chat and one cat on lap, because it's not a decent video of mine without cat bombs, right? I get cat bombed every single time, almost every time. I get cat bombed enough to, the point where I'm convinced that this is why, like, half the people who tune into my streams will tune in, because they're just like, oh, there's cat. There's gonna be cat. Especially Murnau. Oh, yes, you've got a fan club. You've got a fan club. Doesn't he? Okay, hey, one in chat, one like. If as always, if you are at least vaguely entertained by this, or even informed by me reading from Susie Orbach's 1978, I believe. This is obviously a newer print. Yep, okay, yes. Paddington Press edition, published 1978. Berkeley edition, April 1979. All rights reserved. Copyright 1978 by Susie Orbach. So, yeah, this is a printing from. Okay, yeah. So this is a Berkeley edition. It doesn't say which printing, but okay, this Berkeley book contains the complete text of the original hardcover edition. It has been completely reset in a typeface designed for easy reading. It was printed from a new film. Okay. Okay, yeah, it doesn't say which printing this is, but it's got barcodes, so my guess is sometime in the 80s. Since we didn't really start seeing barcodes until very late in the 70s. And even then it was kind of an oddity. But, so yeah, like, they became as widespread as they are now, or at least, we're clearly on that, heading in that direction. I want to say early, mid 1980s, so. Okay. Okay. I've got a cat with a fluffy tail. Oh, he's so goofy. Okay, so I'm just going to start from the beginning of the introductory chapter, since yesterday I read from the preface. But yeah, as always, if you're vaguely entertained and or informed, please feel free to, join Patreon, buy some of my music on Bandcamp. I am working on my EP whilst living in a motel, and all that. And I've got a PayPal generosity network thing set up for that if you wish to contribute. For the time, $15 contribution to that, which is about like 20% of a night here. That is, you'll get a special thanks. You'll be included in like the special thanks for my upcoming EP. Ruadhán drunkenly sings songs by Andy Preboy. And if you wish to donate 75 or more, special thanks plus shout out on my next 10 YouTube video uploads. Streams are something I consider a little bit different, so it'll be like, so I won't guarantee an upload until I've moved in to the new place, however much longer that takes. I'm currently like arguing with people about shit, but that's that's another story for another time, I suppose. Um, and then what happens? Um, Otherwise, I've oh right, yeah, and there's oh yeah, $500 plus contribution. You get added to the executive producer credits. I'll have a week here, and you get downloads of not just the the forthcoming EP, but also music for Chenin de Loup um, and what um, and shout out on my next 20 YouTube uploads. So yeah, within reason. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be for yourself or your own work, but within reason. Like, I'm not gonna give shout outs to any really heinous shit. So, like I said, within reason. So, okay. Obesity and overeating have joined sex as central issues in the lives of many women today. In the United States, 50% of women are estimated to be overweight. And remember, this was written in 1978, so the so the whole thing where people are just like, "Oh, did you know back in 1999 suddenly so many more people were considered overnight." And so it's like I said, like, this was written in 1978, so the fact that these figures are still relevant and then some today kind of throws a wrench into the gears of the whole fat acceptance HAES cult rhetoric, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Okay. 50% of women are estimated to be overweight. Every women's magazine has a diet column. Diet doctors and clinics flourish. The names of diet foods are now part of our general vocabulary. Physical fitness and beauty are every woman's goals. While this preoccupation with fat and food has become so common that we tend to take it for granted, being fat, feeling fat, and the compulsion to overeat are, in fact, serious and painful experiences for the women involved. And as I read from the preface last night, well, this does largely focus on women. Orbach and her, the woman she paired up with, something Munter. Munter. Carol Munter. They have worked with men, just not as extensively as their work with women. So that's why this book will focus mainly on women. So, okay. Being fat isolates and invalidates a woman. Almost inevitably, the explanations offered for fatness point a finger at the failure of women themselves to control their weight, control their appetites, and control their impulses. Women suffering from the problem of compulsive eating endure a double anguish, feeling out of step with the rest of society and believing that it is all their own fault. The number of women who have problems with weight and compulsive eating is large and growing, owing to the emotional distress involved and the fact that the many varied solutions offered to women in the past have not worked. A new psychotherapy to deal with compulsive eating has had to evolve within the context of the movement for women's liberation. This new psychotherapy represents a feminist rethinking of traditional psychoanalysis. A psychoanalytic approach has much to offer toward a solution to compulsive eating problems. It provides ways for exploring the roots of such problems and in early experiences. It shows us how we develop our adult personalities, most importantly, our sexual identity, how a female becomes a girl and then a woman, and how a male baby becomes a boy and then a man. A psychoanalytic insight helps us to understand what getting fat and overeating mean to individual women by explaining their conscious and unconscious acts. An approach based exclusively on classical psychoanalysis without a feminist perspective is, however, inadequate. Since the Second World War, psychiatry has, by and large, told unhappy women that their discontent represents an inability to resolve the edible constellation. Female fatness has been diagnosed as an obsessive-compulsive symptom relating to separation, individuation, narcissism, and insufficient ego development. Note 1. Being overweight is seen as a deviance and anti-men. Overeating and obesity have been reduced to character defects rather than perceived as the expression of painful and conflicting experiences. Furthermore, rather than attempting to uncover and confront women's bad feelings about their bodies or toward food, professionals concerned themselves with the problem of how to get the women thin. So, after the psychiatrists, analysts, and clinical psychologists proved unsuccessful, experimental workers looked for biological and even genetic reasons for obesity. None of these approaches has had convincing, lasting results. None of them has addressed the essential issues of compulsive eating, which are rooted in social inequality of women. So, what this is saying, and keep in mind, this was written in the 70s, so the idea of this being a moral character flaw, like, it's gotten away from this considerably, because this, like I said, this is about 40 some years, this is going on 45 years old. So in that 45 years, like, you see less and less on the, like, daytime and even nighttime chat shows where, where, like, the focus audience is expected to be women. Like, you see less about this being about obesity being, like, a moral failing in the like, North American, like, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant sort of sense. Like I've discussed this with a couple of my ex-Mormon exes about the fine difference between the cultural senses of guilt, high, prevalent in a Catholic upbringing such as my own, versus the sense of shame from a instilled in Mormon households, which I think, because Mormonism came from, it's a distinctly, like, North American, like, a distinctly, like, American, a cat, I swear to God. It's like, Mormonism is specifically an American born form of Protestantism, in a sense. Like, it's not, I've read parts of the Book of Mormon. I haven't read it thoroughly, obviously, but it does seem to, whether intentionally or accidentally, seem to carry a little bit from, like, this is what makes me think accidentally, because it seems somewhat Gnostic in a sense, but at the same time, it takes a lot of it from, like, an amalgamation of various Protestant sects. So, it's fundamentally Protestant in a sense. So that's, and I think, and I've noticed that a lot of people who've had a very, like, Protestant upbringing, especially Pentecostals, they have an instilled sense of shame. Whereas with Catholics, we are raised with a sense of guilt. And like I said, I've discussed this with a few, actually, like, all three of my ex-Mormon exes, to, an extent anyway, where Catholics are raised with guilt. Guilt is based on, and we make this distinction because guilt is based on what you do. Like, you are failing because, you are failing X because you didn't do X properly. And you see this in, like, media tropes with the, not just the Catholic mother guilting people, but also, like, like, the Jewish mother guilting her kids as well. Like, you see this on, like, with Fran Drescher and The Nanny. You see this occasionally on Seinfeld when we see, the fictional representation of his own parents. And so I think that's a lot of, like, how, like, and you see this with Orthodox families as well. Like, guilt is based on what you do, right? Like, you see this in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which, Greek Orthodox family as well. Like I said, like Catholics, Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, Jewish families, like we instill a sense of guilt into the progeny, which is like guilt is based on what you do. Shame, on the other hand, seems to be based on who you are. Like what you are doing is wrong because who you are is wrong. Therefore, change who you are. Right? That's that seems to be like a very Protestant thing, and it is like on full force with Mormons. like, um, so now, um, now I've noticed, like, at least in my lifetime in American culture, um, I've seen like the Protestant, um, sects in American society go so extreme that it's dwindling. On the other hand, you do see like a couple individual things. Like I've seen Owen on Telltale Atheist. He'll say occasionally that Jehovah's Witness congregations seem to be growing, as do certain Pentecostal sects, but at the same time, like it's so extreme that a lot of the more mainstream people who are just very culturally Christian, aren't really attending churches as much, and all. And I don't blame American Catholics, especially with all of the cat. I swear to God. What? What? Come here. You want laugh or not? But I gotcha. Really? Okay. So yeah, like, and confront women's bad feelings about their bodies and towards food. So, like I said, I've seen a shift, where it's getting there. It's getting there. It's not anywhere near an ideal thing, but you see, I'm definitely seeing a lot less of outside of like very extremist sects, um, um, Protestants, telling people that like, no, you should be ashamed of this. This is a moral failing because of who you are. You're seeing a lot less of that in American society. Granted, like I said, like in certain very extreme sects, it does still come up, but you're not seeing it as widespread as it used to be. I've definitely seen a shift within my own lifetime, so that says something. But again, like this paragraph, couple of paragraphs have also pointed out that that there's been no way of like producing consistent, lasting, replicable results that show for a biological or genetic reason for the rise in obesity, which again was even being noticed in the late 70s. Like it was being noticed earlier in the 70s, because the preface from last night that began um, with with a recount of this women's group for compulsive eating and self-image in 1970. So anyway, note one was from the introductory chapter, said see example G. Bichowski, Bychowski, and their essay Neurotic Obesity, this from the Psychology of Obesity, edited N. Kiel, Kiell, Springfield, Illinois, 1973, and also Ludwig Binswanger, Bingswanger, and The Case of Ellen West from Existence, edited Rollo May, New York, 1958. So yeah, again, this book originally published 1978. So of course, a lot of the sources are going to be very outdated, but at the same time, like you can go onto PubMed and compare similar articles. Like this, like I said, like this may be old, but it's still amazingly relevant. So, anyway, a feminist perspective to the problem of women's compulsive eating is essential if we are to move on from the ineffective blame the victim approach and the unsatisfactory adjustment model of treatment. While psychoanalysis gives us useful tools to discover the deepest sources of emotional distress, feminism insists that those painful personal experiences derive from the social context into which female babies are born and within which they develop to become adult women. The fact that compulsive eating is overwhelmingly a woman's problem suggests that it has something to do with the experience of being female in our society. Feminism argues that being fat represents an attempt to break free of society's sex stereotypes. Getting fat can thus be understood as a definite and purposeful act. It is a directed, conscious or unconscious challenge to sex role stereotyping and culturally defined experience of womanhood. So again, we go back to the psychology behind this, and again, we are seeing the rise of like compulsive eating, or now known as binge eating disorder, in men. We're seeing a rise in that in men as well, and we're seeing definitely a rise in obesity in men, largely linked to that. But we still see, especially in the fat acceptance community, that yes, women are bearing the brunt of this obesogenic environment that we live in. So, it is saying that, like consciously or unconsciously, or even subconsciously, I could go into the differences there, but it's like between subconscious and unconscious. I think it's like I think the difference is like subconscious is where it's buried just below the surface, but where you're not thinking about it, but if you think about it a little bit, like, yeah, that's why you do it. But unconscious decisions are, buried a bit deeper, usually related to trauma, for why someone does X, even though X is a dysfunctional action that someone is doing. So, anyway, fat is a social disease, and fat is a feminist issue. Fat is not about lack of self-control or lack of willpower. Fat is about protection, sex, nurturance, strength, boundaries, mothering, substance, assertion, and rage. It is a response to the inequality of the sexes. Fat expresses experiences of women today in ways that are seldom examined and even more seldom treated. While becoming fat does not alter the roots of sexual oppression, an examination of the underlying causes or unconscious motivation that lead women to compulsive eating suggests new treatment possibilities. Unlike most weight-reducing schemes, our new therapeutic approach does not reinforce the oppressive social roles that lead women to compulsive eating in the first place. What is it about the social position of women that leads them to respond to it by getting fat? The current ideological justification for inequality of the sexes has been built on the concept of the innate differences between women and men. Women alone can give birth to and breastfeed their infants, and as a result, a primary dependency relationship develops between mother and child. While this biological capacity is the only known genetic difference between women and men, note 3, it is used as the basis on which to divide unequally women and men's labor, power, roles, and expectations. The division of labor has become institutionalized. Women's capacity to reproduce and provide nourishment has relegated her to the care and socialization of children. The relegation of women to the social roles of wife and mother has several significant consequences that contribute to the problem of fat. First, in order to become a wife and a mother, a woman has to have a man. Getting a man is presented as an almost unattainable and yet essential goal. To get a man, a woman has to learn to regard herself as an item, a commodity, a sex object. Much of her experience and identity depends on how she and others see her. As John Berger says in Ways of Seeing, men act and women appear. Men look at women. Women watch themselves being looked at. This determines not only most relations between men and women, but also the relationship of women to themselves. Note 4. This emphasis on presentation as the central aspect of a woman's existence makes her extremely self-conscious. It demands that she occupy herself with a self-image that others will find pleasing and attractive, an image that will immediately convey what kind of woman she is. She must observe and evaluate herself, scrutinizing every detail of herself as though she were an outside judge. She attempts to make herself in the image of womanhood presented by billboards, newspapers, magazines, and television. The media present women either in a sexual context or within the family, reflecting a woman's two prescribed roles, first as a sex object and then as a mother. She is brought up to marry by catching a man with her good looks and pleasing manner. To do this, she must look appealing, earthy, sensual, sexual, virginal, innocent, reliable, daring, mysterious, coquettish, and thin. In other words, she offers her self-image on the marriage marketplace. As a married woman, her sexuality will be sanctioned and her economic needs will be looked after. She will have achieved the first step of womanhood. Since women are taught to see themselves from the outside as candidates for men, they become prey to the huge fashion and diet industries that first set up the ideal images and then exhort women to meet them. The message is loud and clear. The woman's body is not her own. The woman's body is not satisfactory as it is. It must be thin, free of unwanted hair, deodorized, perfumed, and clothed. It must conform to an ideal physical type. Family and school socialization teaches girls to groom themselves properly. Furthermore, the job is never ending, for the image changes from year to year. In the early 1960s, the only way to feel acceptable was to be skinny and flat-chested with long, straight hair. The first of these was achieved by near starvation, the second by binding one's breasts with an ace bandage, and the third by ironing one's hair. Then in the early 1970s, the look was curly hair and full breasts. Just as styles and clothes change seasonally, so women's bodies are expected to change to fit these fashions. Long and skinny one year, petite and demure the next, women are continually manipulated by images of proper womanhood, which are extremely powerful because they are presented as the only reality. To ignore them means to risk being an outcast. Women are urged to conform, to help out the economy by continuous consumption of goods and clothing that are quickly made unwearable by the next season's fashion styles in clothes and body shapes. In the background, a $10 billion industry waits to remold bodies to the latest fashion. In this way, women are caught in an attempt to conform to a standard that is externally defined and constantly changing. But these models of femininity are experienced by women as unreal, frightening, and unattainable. They produce a picture that is far removed from the reality of women's day-to-day lives. The one constant in these images is that a woman must be thin. For many women, compulsive eating and being fat have become one way to avoid being marketed or seen as the ideal woman. My fat says, "Screw you" to all who want me to be the perfect mom, sweetheart, maid, and whore. Take me for who I am, not for who I'm supposed to be. If you are really interested in me, you can wade through the layers and find out who I am. End quote. In this way, fat expresses a rebellion against the powerlessness of the woman, against the pressure to look and act in a certain way, and against being evaluated on her ability to create an image of herself. Becoming fat is thus a woman's response to the first step in the process of fulfilling a prescribed social role, which requires her to shape herself to an externally imposed image in order to catch a man. But a second stage in this process takes place after she achieves that goal, after she has become a wife and mother. So, I'm going to reread the final paragraph there. But so first, this is like breaking down the pressures of thinness and a svelte lean figure in the 1960s and 70s, especially because, again, context in which it was written. So it's breaking down the pressures to conform to a body type as, being an underlying reason why many women, even in the 70s, were unconsciously or consciously or subconsciously, you know, hello, yes, feeling driven to overeating and, like, as it was called then, compulsive eating, and as it's now often referred to, hi, yes, I see you. We all see you. Or, like, as it's now often referred to, or at least, like, many who would have been referred to as compulsive eaters in the 70s are now seen as having full-blown binge ED these days. So, hi. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Becoming fat is, thus, a woman's response to the first step in the process of fulfilling a prescribed social role which requires her to shape herself to an externally imposed image in order to catch a man. But a second stage in this process takes place after she achieves that goal, after she becomes a wife. Cat, I swear to God, please, nobody wants to see your butt. Arrgh. I love you. You're very cute and you're very sweet, but you're driving me bananas. Okay. There we go. Okay. After she has become a wife and mother. Knock this shit off. Knock it off. Knock it off. For a mother, everyone else's needs come first. Mothers are the unpaid managers of small, essential, complex, and demanding organizations. Oh god, that's right. I forgot how she compares this to capitalism when I read from this last night. Okay, look, you need to stop being this bonkers. I love you, but you're nuts. You are nuts. Okay. Small, essential, complex, and demanding organizations. They may not control the financial arrangements of this microcorporation or the major decisions on location or capital expenditure, but they do generally control the day-to-day operations for... Cat, I swear to God. Go that way. Okay. We're now... Oh my gosh, please knock this shit off. You're driving me nuts. I love you, but you're bonkers. Okay. They may not control the financial arrangements of this microcorporation or the major decisions on location or capital expenditure, but they do generally control the day-to-day operations. For her keep, the mother works an essential 10 hours a day, 18 if she has a second job outside the home, making sure that the food is purchased and prepared, the children's clothes, toys, and books are in place, and that the father's effects are at the ready. She makes the house habitable, clean, and comfy. She does the social secretarial work of arranging for the family to spend time with relatives and friends. She provides a babysitting and chauffeur escort service for her children. As babies and children, we are all cared for. As adults, however, women are expected to feed and clean not only their babies, but also their husbands, and only then themselves. In this role, women experience particular pressure over food and eating. After the birth of each baby, breasts or bottle become a major issue. The mother is often made to feel insecure about her adequacy to perform her fundamental job. In the hospital, the baby is weighed after each feed to see if the mother's breasts have enough milk. Is that still a thing that's done? Pediatricians and baby care books bombard the new mother with authoritative but conflicting advice about, for example, scheduled versus demand feeding, composition of the formula, or the introduction of solid foods. As her children grow older, a woman continues to be reminded that her feeding skills are inadequate. To the tune of billions of dollars a year, the food industry counsels her on how, when, and what she should feed her charges. The advertisements cajole her into providing nutritious breakfasts, munchy snacks, and wholesome dinners. Media preoccupation with good housekeeping, and particularly with good food and good feeding, serves as a yardstick by which to measure the mother's ever-failing performance. This preoccupation colonizes food preparation so that the housewife is presented with a list of do's and don'ts so contradictory that it is a wonder that anything gets produced in the kitchen at all. It is not surprising that a woman quickly learns not to trust her own impulses, either in feeding her family or in listening to her own needs when she feeds herself. During the period in her life which is devoted to child rearing, the woman is constantly making sure that others' lives run smoothly. She does this without thinking seriously that she is working at a full-time job. Her own experience of everyday life is as midwife to others' activities. While she is preparing her children to become future workers and enabling her husband to be a more effective producer, her role is to produce and reproduce workers. In this capacity, she is constantly giving out without receiving the credit that would validate her social worth. In a capitalist society, everyone is defined by their job. A higher status is given to businessmen, academics, and professionals than to production and service workers. Women's work in the home falls into the service and production category. Although often described as menial, deemed creative, dismissed as easy, or revered as God-given, women's work is seen as existing outside the production process and therefore devalued. Women as a group are allowed less expression than the men in their social class. However, oppressed men are, by a class society, they hold more power than women. Every man has to watch out for his boss. Every woman has to watch out lest her man not approve. The standard and views of the day are male. Women are seen as different from normal people, who are men. They are seen as other, note 5. They are not accepted as equal human beings with men. Their full identity is not supported by the society in which they grow. This leads to confusion for women. Women are trapped in the role of an alien, yet delegated responsibility for making sure that others' lives are productive. Since women are not accepted as equal human beings, but are nevertheless expected to devote enormous energy to their lives, to the lives of others, the distinctions between their own lives and the lives of those close to them may become blurred. Merging with others, feeding others, not knowing how to make space for themselves are frequent themes for women. Mothers are constantly giving out and feeding the world. Everyone else's needs are primary. That they feel confusion about their own bodily needs is not surprising, and there may be few ways of noting their personal concerns. A form of giving and replenishing oneself is through food. I eat a lot because I'm always stoking myself up for the day's encounters. I look after my family, my mother, and any number of people who pass in and out of my day. I feel empty with all this giving, so I eat to fill up the spaces and give me sustenance to go on giving to the world. End quote. The resulting fat has the function of making the space for which women crave. It is an attempt to answer the question, quote, if I am constantly giving myself to everyone, where do I begin and end? End quote. We want to look and be substantial. We want to be bigger than society will let us. We want to take up as much space as the other sex. Quote, if I get bigger like a man, then maybe I'll get taken seriously as a man, end quote. What happens to the woman who does not fit the social role? Although the image of ideal sexual object and all-competent mother is socially pervasive, it is not only limiting and unattainable, but it also fails to correspond to the reality of many, many women's lives today. Most women today do still marry and have children, but many also continue to work outside the home after marriage, either to meet economic needs or in an attempt to break the limits of their social role. Women continually juggle with many different aspects of their personalities, which are developed and expressed at great cost against this unfriendly background. In this context, just as many women first become fat in an attempt to avoid being made into sexual objects at the beginning of their adult lives, so many women remain fat as a way of neutralizing their sexual identity in the eyes of others who are important to them as their life progresses. In this way, they can hope to be taken seriously in their working lives outside the home. It is unusual for women to be accepted for their competence in this sphere. When they lose weight, begin to look like a perfect female, they find themselves being treated frivolously by their male colleagues. When women are thin, they are treated frivolously. Thin, sexy, incompetent worker. But if a woman loses weight, she herself may not yet be able to separate thinness from the packaged sexuality around her, which simultaneously defines her as incompetent. It is difficult to conform to one image that society would have you fit, thin, without also being in the other image, sexy female. Quote, when I'm fat, I feel I can hold my own. Whenever I get thin, I feel I'm being treated like a little doll who doesn't know which end is up, end quote. We have seen how fat is a symbolic... Okay. So, this is using a lot of artistic license quotes, probably compiled from the groups that Orbach and Carol Munter led with, for compulsive eaters. So this is like using some elaborate rhetoric to not only compare the way that the household is run very much, with some parallels to capitalist society, but it's also giving some, like I said, like very elaborate explanations of how women are seen in society, in their role as, wife and mother, and, thus suggests that being fat and remaining fat is, sort of a subconscious act of rebellion for many women, in the 70s and even now. In fact, we do see this being more like, we do see that, fat as rebellion celebrated in the HAES cult communities. So, anyway, we have seen how fat is a symbolic rejection of the limitations of women's role, an adaptation that many women use in the burdensome attempt to pursue their individual lives within the prescriptions of their social function. But in order to understand more about the way that overweight and, in particular, overeating function in the lives of individual women, we must examine the process by which they are initially taught their social role. It is a complex and ironic process, for women are prepared for this life of inequality by other women who themselves suffer its limitations, their mothers. The feminist perspective reveals that compulsive eating is, in fact, an expression of the complex relationships between mothers and daughters. Okay. If a woman's social role is to become a mother, nurturing, feeding the baby in the widest possible sense, or feeding the family in the widest possible sense, it is the mother's central job. By and large, it is only within the family that a woman has any social power. Her competence as a mother and her ability to be an emotional support for her family defines her and provides her with a recognized context within which to exist. For a mother, a crucial part of the material role is to help her daughter, as her mother did before her, to make smooth transition into the female social role. From her mother, the young girl learns who she herself is and can be. The mother provides her with a model of feminine behavior and directs the daughter's behavior in particular ways. But the world the mother must present to her daughter is one of unequal relationships between parent and child, authority and powerlessness, man and woman. The child is exposed to the world of power relationships by a unit that itself produces and reproduces perhaps the most fundamental of these inequalities. Within the family, an inferior sense of self is instilled into little girls, note 6. While it is obvious that the growing up process for girls and boys is vastly different, what may be less apparent is that to prepare her daughter for a life of inequality, the mother tries to hold back her child's desires to be a powerful, autonomous, self-directed, energetic, and productive human being. From an early age, the young girl is encouraged to accept this rupture in her development and is guided to cope with this loss by putting her energy into taking care of others. Her own needs for emotional support and growth will be satisfied if she can convert them into giving to others. This is also a very Catholic thing too, and in my family at least, like this was this was something that, like, even my dad did a lot, was, maybe that's a very Irish Catholic thing, but, anyway. Meanwhile, little boys are taught to accept emotional support without learning how to give this kind of nurturing and loving in return. Therefore, when a young woman finally achieves the social reward of marriage, she finds that it rarely provides either the nurture she still needs or an opportunity for independence and self-development. To be a woman is to live with the tension of giving and not getting, and the mother and daughter involved in the process leading to this conclusion are inevitably bound up in ambivalence, difficulty, and conflict. If we look at it from the mother's point of view, the process of leading her daughter to adult womanhood is ambivalent for several reasons. The first is the question of independence. The mother, who has been prepared for a life of giving, finds her feeding, nurturing, and child-rearing capacity, so integral to her success in her social role, satisfied. She is to be needed and has indeed fulfilled herself as a good mother by attentively feeding her child. Thus, mothers do and do not want their daughters to leave them. They do because the maternal role also requires them to prepare their daughters for eventual independence. To fail at this is to fail at motherhood. On the other hand, to succeed at this signals the end of motherhood. We have seen that of the limited roles that have been available to women in this century, the 20th century, motherhood is the only one in which women have legitimate power. In fact, like, even like within the last century, like from, down to the 1920s to now, like, this is still generally true. Therefore, their personal success at being mothers results in their loss of power. Their personal success is a dead end. It does not lead on the creation of a new, equally powerful role. The mother's ambivalence is, however, even more painful in that mothers do and do not want their daughters to be like them. For a daughter to be like her mother is a way, at least partially, to validate the mother's life. But the mother's life remains an invalidated life, and the daughter's act of reproducing her mother's lifestyle can be no more than a perpetuation of powerlessness. In her love for her daughter, the mother must inevitably want a different life for her. Nevertheless, mothers feel ambivalent about the changing opportunities available to their daughters, which are not available to them. They may be jealous of these opportunities and fearful of their daughters' welfare in a world they know to be hostile to women. At the same time, as they acquire some indirect satisfaction at their daughter's ambition and success, while a mother must be a mother, a daughter can be ambitious and engaged in the world. Let us now look at how these conflicts from the daughter's point of view. Daughters do and do not want to leave their mothers. For a daughter to leave is for her to become independent, part of the world, to signal her emergence as a female adult. However, this autonomy itself causes problems. As we have seen, independence in the world is not yet an option for female adults. Daughters feel ambivalent about their opportunities in the world. They are ill-prepared to take them up, as they have learned both from the culture at large and from their own mothers. Daughters identify with the powerlessness of their mothers as women in a patriarchal society. They have been brought up to be like their mothers, but daughters both do and do not want to be like their mothers. While they identify with their mothers as women, as givers, as caretakers, they may nevertheless desire a different experience of womanhood. In moving outside the prescribed female role, the daughter may feel she is betraying her mother or is showing her up by doing better. She may also feel nervous about being on shaky, untested ground. Furthermore, knee was cramping. In leaving and moving outside the prescribed female role, the daughter may feel she is betraying her mother or is showing her up by doing better. She may also feel nervous about being on shaky, untested ground. Furthermore, if a daughter identifies with her mother's powerlessness, she may see her role as that of taking care of her mother, to provide her mother with the love, care, and interest she never received. She becomes her mother's mother. Leaving becomes even more of a betrayal. How do these ambivalences and conflicts in the mother-daughter relationship come to express themselves in fat, food, and feeding?
How is each adult woman who suffers from compulsive eating expressing what happened to her with her mother? It is obvious that feeding plays a crucial part in the relationship of mother and child, whatever the child's sex. Within the whole spectrum of nurturing activities expected of mothers, physical feeding is the most fundamental, indeed instinctive. A mother's breasts provide food for her children, virtually without any conscious act on her own part, whereas all other nurturing activities, including the vital provision of emotional support, must be learned. Because of her ambivalence toward her daughter, a mother's willingness to provide her with sensitive nurturing, both physically and emotionally, can be undermined. Both female and male babies experience their first love relationships with the mother, but early on, the mother must withhold a certain degree of support and sustenance from her daughter in order to teach her the ways of womanhood. This has specific consequences. In Little Girls, note 11, Elena Gianni Bellotti cites a study of mothers' attitudes and actions when feeding their babies. In a sample of babies of both sexes, 99% of boys were breastfed, while only 66% of girls were. Girls were weaned significantly earlier than boys and spent 50% less time feeding. In the case of breast and bottle feeds, this meant much smaller feeds than the boys. Thus, daughters are often fed less well, less attentively, and less sensitively than they need. Inappropriate and insensitive physical feeding is subsequently paralleled unconsciously by inadequate emotional feeding. While unconsciously I kind of want to look up this study. Let's see, number 7. D. Brunet and I. Lezine. I primi Anna del Bambino. Okay, so this is an Italian thing. Cited in Elena Gianni Bellotti, Little Girls, London, 1975, pages 32 through 34. While the study took place in Europe, it does not rule out the relevance in the American context. The book in which it is extensively quoted is one of the most thoughtful descriptions of the socialization of young girls and the significance of the early sex-linked feeding relationship. I mean, that's definitely that's definitely something to look up, because that just, wow, that stuns me. Okay. While unconsciously the mother may not be nurturing her daughter well, she gives up feeding her daughter only reluctantly. In the absence of an alternative role, the distinction between herself and her child, now outside the womb, may become blurred. The mother may see her child as a product, a possession, or an extension of herself. Thus, the mother has an interest in retaining control over how much, what, when, and how her child eats. She needs to encourage this initial dependency for her own social survival. There may be great ambivalence about feeding and nurturing. A mother must make sure her daughter is not overfed in case she becomes greedy and overweight, a terrible fate for a girl. She must make sure the child looks healthy. This is normally associated with certain roundness, and she needs the child to depend on her for who else is she if she is not seen as a mother? Yet she may also dislike this dependency, which ties her down, drains her, and prevents her from directing her energies elsewhere. Finally, she must prepare her daughter to become the future nurturer and feeder of someone else, her daughter's future child, lover, husband, or parents. She must teach her daughter to be concerned with feeding and nourishing others at the cost of not fully developing herself. Meanwhile, on the daughter's side, as she develops from child to woman, the daughter's feeding of herself can become a symbolic response to both the physical and emotional deprivation she suffered as a child, an expression of her fraught intimacy with her mother. As the child gets more adept, she begins to feed herself and select her own foods, producing a developing sense of independence of the mother. But this break causes conflict for the daughter. On the other hand, the ability to nurture herself suggests a rejection of the mother. This rejection takes on a deep significance because of the social limitation of the woman's role in patriarchal society. If the mother is not needed as mother, who will she be? The daughter feels guilty about destroying her mother's only role. As she seeks emotional sustenance through other social relationships, the adult daughter, may continue to suffer deprivation, as her own partner has, very often, not learned to give. Oh, it's nice to see that there's some gender-neutral language in here. As she seeks emotional sustenance through other social relationship, the adult daughter may continue to suffer deprivation, as her own partner has, very often, not learned to give. She turns to eating in this search for love, comfort, warmth, and support, for the indefinable something that seems never to be there. Compulsive eating becomes a way of expressing either side of this conflict. If overfeeding herself, the daughter may be trying to reject her mother's role, while at the same time... Oh my god, you're so annoying. While at the same time reproaching the mother for inadequate nurturing. Or she may be attempting to retain a sense of identity with her mother. Popular culture abounds with evidence of the symbolic value that food and fat hold between mothers and daughters. In Lady Oracle, Note 8, for example, Margaret Atwood shows how the daughter's fat becomes her weapon in her battle with her mother. When her mother gives Joan a clothing allowance as an incentive to reduce, Joan deliberately buys clothes that flaunt her size and finally, with the purchase of a lime green car coat, succeeds in reducing her mother to tears. Quote from book, My mother had never cried where I could see her, and I was dismayed, but elated too at this evidence of my power, my only power. I had defeated her. I couldn't ever let her make me over in her image, thin and beautiful. End quote. Similarly, in the movie Summer Wishes, Winter Dreams, when the mother criticizes her daughter's size, the latter blasts back that her fat is her own, that it is something for which she alone is responsible, that it is something her mother cannot take away. Women engaged in exploring their compulsive eating in relation to their mothers have come to the following varied realizations. My fat says, quote, My fat says to my mother, I'm substantial. I can protect myself. I can go out into the world. My fat says to my mother, look at me. I'm a mess. I don't know how to take care of myself. You can still be my mother. My fat says to my mother, I'm going out in the world. I can't take you with me, but I can take a part of you that's connected to me. My body is from yours. My fat is connected to you. This way, I can still have you with me. My fat says to my mother, I'm leaving you, but I still need you. My fat lets you know that I'm not really able to take care of myself. Oh my gosh, this sounds so... This sounds so much like something that Marissa Matthews would be saying if she had a little bit more self-awareness. Like we've seen how her mother can get. They have like this toxic codependent relationship. It's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, like if Marissa Matthews had a little bit of self-awareness, this whole passage here just sounds like, you know, something she would be able to say. It's okay. Oh, sweet. Okay, I've only got a little bit further to go for the introduction. And tomorrow we go to chapter 1. Okay. So, for the compulsive eater, fat has much symbolic meaning, which makes sense within a feminist context. Fat is a response to the many oppressive manifestations of a sexist culture. Fat is a way of saying no to the powerlessness and self-denial, to a limiting sexual expression which demands that females look and act a certain way, and to an image of womanhood that defines a specific social role. Fat offends Western ideals of female beauty, and, as such, every overweight woman creates a crack in the popular culture's ability to make us mere products. Fat also expresses the tension in the mother-daughter relationship, the relationship which has been allocated to the the relationship which has been allocated the feminization of the female. The relationship is bound to be difficult in a patriarchal society because it demands that the already oppressed mothers become the teachers, preparers, and enforcers of the oppression that society will visit on their daughters. While fat serves the symbolic function of rejecting the way by which society distorts women and their relationship with others, particularly in the critical relationship between mothers and daughters, getting fat remains an... Cat, I swear to God. While fat serves the symbolic function of rejecting the way by which society distorts women and their relationships with others, particularly the critical relationship between mothers and daughters, getting fat remains an unhappy and unsatisfactory attempt to resolve these conflicts. It is a painful price to pay whether a woman is trying to conform to society's expectations or attempting to forge a new identity. When something is amiss in this way, we can expect a psychological imbalance and reaction. Few things could be more amiss than the attempt of a patriarchal culture to inhibit a young girl's desires to be creative and expressive, to push her almost exclusively into restrictive gender-linked activities, thoughts, and feelings. A woman's psychological development is structured in such a way as to prepare her for a life of inequality. But this straitjacket is not accepted lightly and invariably causes a reaction. Psychological disturbance often distorts a person's physiological capacity, ability to eat, sleep, talk, or enjoy sexual activity. I suggest that one of the reasons we find so many women suffering from eating disorders is because the social relationship between feeder and fed, between mother and daughter, fraught as it is with ambivalence and hostility, becomes a suitable mechanism for distortion and rebellion. An examination... this does very much echo things that of Verbs and Alters Dorian has said about their own history with ED, right? Like this last like couple of paragraphs, but the most recent one I just read, that begins with when something is amiss and ends with I suggest that this is one of the reasons we find so many women suffering with eating disorders because So yeah, this very much echoes a lot of what Dorian at Herbs and Altars has said about their own eating disorder history, right? Which again, it's surprising how much of this still seems very relevant today, even though this was written almost 45 years ago. Okay, anyway. Excuse me. An examination of the symbolic meanings of fat provides insight into individual women's experience in patriarchal culture. Fat is an adaptation to the oppression of women, and, as such, it may be an unsatisfying personal solution and an ineffectual political attack. It is to this problem that our compulsive eating therapy speaks, and it is within a feminist context that this is developed in the following chapters. So, of course, that is just given a breakdown of the presentation of this, and again, like I said, it's kind of we like to think that we came so far in the last 45 years especially, but just reading this, it's kind of appalling how relevant so much of it still is, given that it's been almost 45 years. It's been 44 years since this was first published. And yet so much of it is still relevant. But then again, when you look into history of the ancient Greek Olympics, right? There was a time, and there were many places in ancient Greece where you could use a vial of sweat from an Olympic winner, somebody who won one of the Olympic Games in ancient Greece, you could use a vial of his sweat as legal tender for settling a debt, right? You could use it as currency, basically. It was as good as money. How they'd go about proving this is, that this is what it is. I mean, you figure, at some point somebody would develop, this sort of what would now be called a certificate of authenticity. But, like when you think about the fact that, okay, in ancient Greece, people were using a vial of Olympic winter sweat as legal tender to, for payment, right? And, you can see people on eBay selling like not just Air Jordans, but Michael Jordan's like college, basketball jersey or something. Like, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't see that on eBay. Well, not these days anyway. That's been like so long after the fact. But, like you would see that kind of thing going at auction for like hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So, like, have we really evolved that much? Have we really evolved that much as a society, like, just in general? Like, has Western society really come as far as we like to think we have? Or is it all just something that we tell ourselves to feel better about things? Like I said yesterday, comparing current society to like the Norman Lear oeuvre of the 1970s. So like, your All in the Family, Good Times, Maude, all those TV sitcoms from back then. Um, like if you think about it, we really haven't come all that far. Like it's appalling to me, like how like the topic of inflation and the cost of living is from episodes that first aired in like 1974 are still relevant today. Like it's appalling. I mean, yeah, the numbers have changed, like the numbers, like the numerical values of the dollars have changed, between now and then, but these are still relevant conversations. Like, it's kind of appalling to me, like how, but at the same time, I've also known enough about human history and society and all that to know that, like the more things change, the more they stay the same in a way. Like, we can make so much progress with technology, but socially, we are still hashing out the same issues that we have been for at least a century, right? So let's see. Tomorrow, gonna go to chapter one now. The contents here. So like the first like proper chapter is what is fat about for the compulsive eater. Sunday, I'm thinking what is thin about for the compulsive eater. Monday, yeah, that's Labor Day. The experience of hunger for the compulsive eater. Tuesday would be self-help. Um, oh wow, that's a really long ass chapter. Um, so let's see. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday will be self-starvation, anorexia nervosa. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Thursdays, medical issues. And hey, looks like I'll have it done in a week. And then next Friday, we can move on to Fat is a Feminist Issue Part 2, a program to conquer compulsive eating. So, and this was originally published in 1982, I believe. I know I mentioned, yep, 82. Okay. And so let's see, when we get to this next Friday, I think I'll go with like, the introduction next Friday, then chapter one for next Saturday, the roots of the problem, then then a week from Sunday, slimness, the new God, and chapter 3 would be food awareness, chapter 4, food and emotional hungers, chapter 5, body image, chapter 6, exploring your problem, chapter 7, organizing a compulsive eating group, and then part 2, psychological exercises, how to use the exercises, ideal kitchen, and further reading. So, okay. So it looks like I should get this all done in a little over 2 weeks. That would be nice. Other than that, if you feel like you were kind of informed by all of this and have anything and wish to show your gratitude, I've got a PayPal generosity network thing going in the description below. You can check that out. Katz and I are currently in a motel. Why that is, I will probably get to after we've settled down at the new place, which I'm hoping won't be that much longer. I really hope for this. I don't but and the reason I don't want to get into this right now is because I want to, have a more stable state of mind when I'm looking back, when I'm talking about this. So, and right now, my mind is focused on how to reduce stress. And so, talking about the incident that is giving me a lot of stress outside of the context of my therapist meetings, yeah, that does not seem especially productive. So, what'll happen with that? I'll get to it when I get to it. So, um, but yeah, you can contribute to keeping the cats and I off the streets through the PayPal Generosity Network. If you would rather get something for your money besides like a special thanks note and all that in my upcoming EP, which I am working on. In fact, it is like the 3rd of the month, so I will be getting my Social Security disability. I'm going to invest in some cheap ass wine and record a second version of Build a Better Garden. The first version you can already hear on Tidal, or if you really have to, Spotify. I prefer Tidal. I've done my research. They give a better payout to the artists, and as an artist myself, yeah, I would rather pitch Tidal to people. Hi, Kat. Yes, we all see you. We all see how floofy you are. And of course, if you have more dollars than cents, feel free to contribute via Patreon on a monthly basis. I am dead serious when I say that at the $50 mark, if you give me your phone number, I will make a call once a month. I will sing at you. The first month will be You're Crazy by Guns N' Roses. After that is anybody's guess. Right, my little noodle? You're such a goofy noodle. Oh, you're so cute, but so annoying. He is. He is like exactly as cute as he is annoying. You know this, don't you? He loves this. He loves this. Come here. Really? He's a pain in my ass, but it's true. You are. But okay. Yeah. Hi. Let me see if I can. Let me see about turning this around. Oh, there we go. You had to sit up, didn't you? You had to stand back up. Oh, you're so cute, though. Okay. But yeah, like I said, if you have more dollars than cents, you can contribute on a monthly basis via Patreon. And if you wish to contribute at the $50 plus amount on Patreon, I will sing at you once a month. I won't say anything else. I won't ask you any questions. I won't even say hello. I will hear you pick up the phone, or I will wait for it to go to voicemail, and I will sing. And and that's the deal. Like that is it. You get like a super private once a month concert of a single song.
Right? Yes, I know. Poor little noodle. He loves us. He likes it rough.
But yeah, other than that, be sure to wear your sunscreen, even though it is now September. Like, the sun is still there. It exists. Even in winter, wear your sunscreen. Hello, yes, are you slurping me? I know, it's because I got the furry legs, isn't it? There's little noodle. I don't know why I call him a little noodle. He just is. Like, you just gotta look at him sometimes. He is a little noodle. But yeah, wear your sunscreen. Otherwise, take very good care of yourselves and have exactly the kind of day you deserve.
Right, my goofball? Right, my little goofball? My goofy little floofball? Oh, yes.
And and of course, like, hit the like, hit the subscribe, bell notification, etc., etc. Bats and kisses, no sta a wheel.